Welcome, teachers! Today, we're jumping into a really interesting one. Unit 10 from the TKT Module 1 syllabus. We're talking all about exposure and focus on form. Trust me, these ideas are absolutely key to understanding how our students actually learn and, of course, for nailing that exam. So let's kick things off with a question I think every single teacher has wrestled with. How does grammar learning really happen? Do students just absorb it by listening? Or do we need to stop everything, get out the whiteboard marker, and drill the rules? You know? This very question is really at the heart of what we're going to unpack today. Here's our game plan. We'll start with what I call the C of language. Then we'll look at how to guide our students' attention to form. After that, we'll tackle the super important difference between form and forms. Then we'll get practical with strategies for your classroom. And we'll wrap up with how to really master this for TKT Unit 10. It's all going to flow from the big ideas right down to what you can do in class tomorrow. All right, let's dive right in with our first section, the C of language. We're going to look at two concepts that are, well, the absolute bedrock for any language learning to even begin. I'm talking about exposure and noticing. Okay, first up, exposure. The easiest way to think about this is to literally picture your students swimming in a huge sea of English. It's everything they hear, everything they read, all the interactions they have. This is the raw material, the input they need to get started. And this sea isn't just made of one thing. It's this rich, complex mix of everything. We're talking vocabulary, grammar patterns, how the language sounds, and even the unwritten rules of conversation. It's the whole shebang. But, just floating in that sea isn't quite enough. The real magic, the learning, starts with this idea of noticing. This is that little light bulb moment when a student's brain picks out one specific fish from that giant sea. Maybe it's a new word or a weird verb ending they keep hearing. That's noticing.
And this is the key takeaway, really. Noticing is the bridge. It's what turns all that background noise, all that input, into something the brain can actually grab onto and start working with. If they don't notice it, they can't learn it. Simple as that.
So, if noticing is that vital first step, what's our role in all this? How can we as teachers help make that happen more often and more effectively? That brings us right to our next section, guiding attention to form.
This is where the term focus on form comes into play. I want you to think of it like we're handing our students a magnifying glass. We're gently pointing out something interesting, a specific language feature. But, and this is so important, we're doing it inside a real conversation, not by stopping it cold.
And this can look a lot of different ways, right? It could be you subtly reformulating a student's sentence correctly. Or maybe it's a student on their own who suddenly sees a pattern in a story they're reading. It's all about making the structure, the form, stand out just enough while the focus is still on meaning.
Okay, let's zoom in on something that you absolutely have to be crystal clear on for the TKT exam. It might sound like a tiny difference in wording, but believe me, the concepts are worlds apart. Okay, on one side we have focus on forms. See that S on the end? That's the old school way, teaching grammar rules in isolation, one after another. Think grammar charts. On the other side is focus on form, no S. That's the modern communicative approach of looking at grammar as it pops up naturally. This table really lays it all out. The focus on forms approach is all about accuracy first. It treats language like a science experiment. You dissect it, learn the rules, and drill them. But focus on form flips that. It's meaning first. It's about observing the language in its natural habitat, doing its job in a real task. Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, doesn't it? But the big question is, how do we actually do this? How do we bring these ideas into our classrooms on a Tuesday morning? Let's get practical. It really boils down to three big things. First, just flood the room with authentic English. That's your exposure. Second, become an expert at helping your students notice things in all that language. And third, use those little moments to focus their attention on the form, maybe with a quick correction or a well-planned task. And if you want to get better at helping them notice, here are some amazing tools for your toolbox. Highlighting stuff on the board, using different colors, asking questions like, hey, what's going on with the verb here? All these little things act like a spotlight, guiding their attention right where it needs to be.
All right, let's wrap this up by making sure you are totally prepared for any questions the TKT throws at you about this unit. Here's your final checklist.
This is basically your study guide right here. You've got to know the definitions cold. You must be able to explain the difference between form and forms. And you need to be able to look at a classroom scenario and say, ah, that teacher is encouraging noticing, or that task is designed for focus on form. If you've got these down, you're in a great spot. So, let's try a classic TKT-style question. A teacher puts I go and I went on the board and asks, what's the difference? What are they doing? Well, it's not just exposure, and they aren't drilling a rule yet. They're trying to get the students to become aware of the change. So yep, the answer is B, encouraging noticing.
So if you want a simple way to remember it all, think of it like this. Exposure is the fuel, the wood for the fire. Noticing is the spark that gets it all started. And our job when we use focus on form is to gently fan that flame and help it grow into real, confident language use.
So I'll leave you with this question to take into your own teaching. In your next class, what's one small but important bit of language you can help your students notice without grinding the whole conversation to a halt? Just thinking about that is the first step to making your classroom an even more powerful place for learning to happen. Thanks for joining this explainer.